everybody.
Howdy.
Just a quick intro here because the talk itself is almost an hour long.
It's like 55 minutes long.
Yeah, and we didn't want to cut any of the talk out because it is so bad. But a lot of gems in there to show how bad this cult indoctrination is. And the fact that he's actually talking to kids is even worse. I mean, the way he talks down to these kids. I mean, at one point he says, "We're ashamed of you." It's like, oh my God. You know, no wonder kids are leaving. But I just want to mention, thank you, Jerry Jones, who sent me this talk. For those of you who haven't seen any of his videos lately, he has been on fire lately. But he sent me this talk, and as soon as I heard the name, it was like, I know that guy. Name. Yeah, I believe he was the circuit overseer down in Phoenix, about 93, 94.
Yeah, but I have more of a personal connection with this idiot. My Pioneer School picture. Here he is. This is the guy giving a talk, Chuck Valorz. And this is Gene Fields. He's now the instructor in Florida.
And Mikey is the one hiding behind the sign.
Yes.
Oh, whoops, other side.
Yes. And we're going to mention this brother here also as we get into this intro. But at the time, I was really impressed with Chuck Valorz because I actually witnessed a sister going into the back room during one of the breaks asking him a question, and he had a bound volume opened. And I watched him just completely close that bound volume and give his undivided attention to that sister. What was interesting about him closing that bound volume, there was no bookmark. So he had to go back and refine that page afterwards. But after I've heard this, oh my goodness, I don't respect this guy any longer because, you gotta remember, he's a circuit overseer. So while he's condemning, and I mean condemning, the young kids in Phoenix at this time, you gotta remember, he's also hiding a horrific pedophile problem throughout the entire organization. Talk about a hypocrite and a man with double standards. It's pathetic. It truly is. It truly is pathetic that this guy has got the nerve to give up and give this talk while he knows in his mind he's hiding a pedophile problem and he's not warning the congregation of the pedophilia and child abuse problem.
And then he's talking about kids going off and partying stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God.
Yes. But for Kim and I, we've from time to time received emails from people that think maybe we should be a little more kinder and gentler towards...
Calm down a little bit.
Yeah, maybe not get so angry. Well, for those that like to think that way, you're perfectly well within your right. Just as much as we are within our right to read to you Ecclesiastes chapter 3, starting at verse 1. Just a friendly reminder. For everything there is an appointed time, even a time for every affair under the heavens. A time for birth and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot what was planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to kill and a time to heal. This is not the time to heal. This is a time to do away with Watchtower. A time to break down and a time to build. See, this is the time to break down this Watchtower nonsense. Here you've got a circuit overseer condemning the actions of young adults, and yet at the same time, he's not warning the congregation of the pedophilia and child abuse problem. So I'm going to go on, verse 7, a time to rip apart. Well, aren't we ripping apart Watchtower? Absolutely. Ecclesiastes gives us that time to do that. And a time to sew together. Well, this is not the time to sew together right now, friends. A time to keep quiet and a time to speak. Well, this is the time to speak. It's not a time to keep quiet. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace.
We're in a war right now. And, you know, this cult has damaged so many people.
Yes. Until Watchtower's gone, there can be no peace, because these people are hurting. Every ex-JW member that has left Watchtower is hurting. Our families have been ripped apart because you get idiots like this circuit overseer who dares to get up and chastise young adults for doing what comes natural, and yet he's absolutely not warning and or protecting the congregation against child abusers and pedophiles.
Now, what's interesting about the brother that Mike showed in his pioneer picture, Elder Mike.
Elder Mike, you've heard us talk about him. Go ahead.
He told us that in this time period, in 1 week, he had 17 judicial hearings. Now, do you think he would admit to us that any of those were pedophiles? Oh, no.
It was all about the loose conduct of the young adults in the Phoenix area at this time.
Yeah, exactly.
And the reason why Kim and I know a little bit about this is because we lived in Arizona during this whole time period. All of this was going on, and there was a lot of rumors going around as to what these young adults were doing. But you never, ever, ever heard anything about child abuse or pedophilia
until later.
Yeah, coming out of the mouths of these circuit overseers.
Yeah.
Hypocrites.
And it wasn't until later, after we left, that we found out that in this time period that there was quite a few pedophiles in Phoenix that, you know, were getting arrested and stuff.
So, quite honestly, the anger and the hate is absolutely justified. If you read Ecclesiastes chapter 3, there's a time for every affair under the sun. And right now, this is the time to continue to make war against Watchtower and expose this nonsense.
Now, Mike and I know that it's going to be very difficult for you to listen through this whole talk to the end, but we strongly recommend that you do, because towards the end, he's even going to be talking about a young woman that him and another brother go visit, and she was raised in the truth, and she left.
Yep.
And, I mean, if this is how they talk to people they're trying to bring back to the fold, oh my God, I don't blame her for not wanting anything to do with him anyway. He's demeaning. I mean, talk about, you know, condescending, sarcastic.
What is it the scriptures that say? Out of the heart's abundance.
Yeah.
So the mouth speaks.
And then he says, oh, and then her boyfriend came out of, you know, the trailer, and he was a Mormon.
Yeah, what a piece
of work. And I mean,
work.
this time, the congregation is laughing.
Yeah.
So they're laughing at how he is talking to this person.
How he's describing this.
Why do you even bother going visit someone like this if you're just going to drive them away further?
Yeah. So you know what, Chucky boy, I have no respect for you any longer.
Little Chucky?
Little Chucky. And you know what? Towards the end of this talk, you kind of like put a little challenge out there. Don't you? Listen to the talk, friends, and you'll hear this little challenge.
Come talk to me.
Chucky boy, my face is in this camera. I'll go one-on-one with you. Trust me, I will go one-on-one with you. I don't fear talking to any of you boys face-to-face at this time point. See, I'm not going to talk behind your back, Chuck. I'll talk to you face-to-face.
To the world.
Here I am. Here I am. Just click on Mike and Kim. We'll even film this, if you dare.
He won't.
No, he won't.
Yes.
Because I got one question, and one question only. How could you conscientiously give this talk acting like you're protecting the congregation from the influence of young adults when you know damn well in the back of your mind, boy, you were protecting a serious child abuse and pedophile problem in the organization? You can't get away from that.
Well, even right in Phoenix itself.
Yeah. Well, just look at the still pictures that Kim's put with this talk.
Yeah,
You'll see the problem with pedophile and child abuse.
Talk about parade of pedophiles. And this is just a couple. I mean, there was hundreds and hundreds of like mug shots and pedophile, you know, and I couldn't remember the name of the one that got arrested in Phoenix itself. Mm-hmm. So, that's why his picture isn't in here. But I do know there was one
Yeah.
in this time period that did get arrested. It was a bad one. So, thank you so much for watching. And I know it's going to be brutal, but
It's brutal.
for any who wants to use this talk, please take it, use it. There is some really disturbing things in here. And thanks again, Jerry, and everybody. And we hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Keeping awake at my doors day by day, by watching at the posts of my entrances. For the one finding me will certainly find life and gets goodwill from Jehovah, but the one missing me is doing violence to his soul. All those intensely hating me are the ones that do love death. So the Bible is encouraging us to gain wisdom. Now, I'm going to begin this talk by telling you a little bit about realistic expectations of a public speaker. When a brother like myself stands in front of an audience, such as we have here tonight, what should I expect my talk is going to accomplish? All I can do is present facts and try to motivate people to take the right course. To take to heart what counsel is being given. It's like yelling fire. That's all you can do. The people have to respond and move out of the building that's on fire. If they choose not to, it's not the problem of the person who gave the warning. Now, tonight we're going to be discussing something that is very serious. And it's a difficult talk to give. So I want you to listen and pay attention. In 1933, in Nazi Germany, our brothers were they began to be subjected to terrible persecution from the Nazi regime. Some of the material is found in this book. And I was reading it over. I want to read something to you, if you don't mind. This had to do with our brothers who, at that time, had been sentenced to death. These were young men. Are there young men here? This letter is from Franz Reiter. He was facing death by guillotine. They cut his head off. He did die. But listen to the letter that he wrote. He wrote it to his mother. He says, "I'm strongly convinced in my belief that I'm acting correctly. Being here, I could still change my mind, but with God, this would be disloyalty. All of us here wish to be faithful to God, to his honor. With what I knew, if I had taken the military oath, I would have committed a sin deserving death. That would be evil to me. I would have no resurrection. But I stick to that which Christ said, whoever will save his life will lose it. But whosoever will lose his life for my sake, the same will receive it. And now, my dear mother and all my brothers and sisters, today I was told my sentence. Don't be terrified, it is death. I will be executed tomorrow morning. I have my strength from God, the same as it always was with true Christians away back in the past." The apostle wrote, "Whosoever is born from God cannot sin." That sure goes for me. This I prove to you. You can recognize it. My dear one, don't get heavy-hearted. It would be good for all of you to know the Holy Scriptures better still. If you will stand firm until death, we shall meet again in the resurrection, your friends. That was his last letter. Berthold Szabo was executed by a firing squad on March 2nd, 1945. He wrote his sister, "My dear sister Marika, these 1.5 hours I have left, I will try to write to you, so you'll be able to let our parents immediately facing death. I wish them the same peace of mind that I experienced these last moments of this world fraught with disaster. It is now 10 o'clock. I will be executed at 11:30. I am quite calm, My future life I lay in the hands of Jehovah and his beloved Son, Jesus Christ. My hand is calm now. I shall go to rest until Jehovah calls me again. Even now I shall keep the vow I took for him. Here's another thing that happened. This is the last one I'm going to read to you. It's quite interesting. In an effort to break the spirit of the witnesses, the camp commander at Sachsenhausen ordered August Dickmann, a young witness, a young boy, to be executed in the presence of all the prisoners, with Jehovah's Witnesses out in front, where they could get the full impact of the execution. After that, the rest of the prisoners were dismissed. This apparently is the event that was recorded in the book Jehovah's Witnesses and the Divine Purpose, where they gave him a microphone and asked him to renounce his faith in front of everyone in the camp, because they knew that if he did renounce his faith, that would undermine the determination of all the brothers. And if they shot him, that would strike fear in their hearts. So the SS thought, we cannot lose. They shot Brother Dickmann. They killed him, a young boy, because he just took the microphone and gave a fine witness. With great emphasis, the commander asked them, who is now ready to sign the declaration? By the way, there's a copy of this declaration on page 661 of our new book. You can look at it. It's translated into English. Not one of the more than 400 witnesses responded. Then 2 stepped forward. Not to sign, but to ask their signatures, given about a year earlier, be annulled. You know, we look at this young man, or these young men, with tremendous admiration. We are proud of them. In the face of death, and to their death, they did not swerve 1 inch from demonstrating their allegiance to Jehovah and their faithfulness to him. The problem is we're 50 years from that and some 7,000 miles away. The issue of faithfulness is the same. The enemy is different. His weapons are truly different. All he wants to do is break your integrity. And is he working on our young people? So the setting may be not a firing squad, but the back seat of a car, where a young boy and girl, both Jehovah's people, have engaged in some immoral act. They've broken their integrity. It's the same issue. We're ashamed of them, because they're not doing what this young man did. He gave his life. But they think it's funny. Some have a reputation for using filthy language. They have foul mouths. They've picked it up from the world and they think it's cute or smart. It's cheap. And it shows them to be ignorant. And others have engaged in the use of tobacco and drugs, thinking it's cute. And they're getting away with it, and they are not. Or looking at pornography or misusing alcohol. We're going to lose these kids. They look at one another and giggle, or jab each other, or make faces across the Kingdom Hall. And then in those glances of disrespect, which are obvious to everybody, they only show themselves to be extremely foolish. But they think it's cool. It's not cool. It's a slap in Jehovah's face, and we who are trying to stay faithful to this religion and to this word of truth are offended. I'm going to tell you a real-life story that I was involved in. Please listen. Back in 1980, in another state not all that far from here, there was a family, a boy and 2 girls. Their parents were in the truth and tried to rear them properly, but apparently the parents didn't pull it off, or the kids were rebellious. I don't know which. I wasn't there at that time. But when I came on the scene, the boy was about 18, the girls were 16. They were twins. They formed the nucleus of a group. They were popular. The way they dressed and carried themselves. And they knew all the latest worldly stuff, the way they talked. And so people rallied around them. And before they finished, they had introduced cigarettes to the kids, and alcohol, stealing, and immorality. And they were in the congregation. And they thought they were really getting away with something because the parents didn't know. And they had a real conspiracy of silence going on so that they would talk to one another. What are you going to tell her? Let's tell her this. Well, don't tell her that. What are you going to tell your dad? We were here. No, we were there. And they keep changing the stories around, and they think they're getting away with something. Oh, we can be fooled. But Jehovah God cannot. And it eventually comes out, and it did with these people. If you lived back then and you weren't in the loop, if you weren't in with this group, they looked at you, you were a nerd, you were weird, you weren't cool. So you did what they did in order to be accepted. It's the same today. Do something theocratic, say something spiritual, do something right, and they'll put you down. Well, they're not worth associating with. Stay away from them. They're bad. They're bad association. They'll kill you. They think it's funny. Even as I speak now, they may think it's funny. These 3 kids that I'm talking about took 3 dozen other children and corrupted them. 3 dozen. Now, what happened to these kids? The older boy died at the age of 25. He was in a disfellowship state because he was on drugs and alcohol, and it killed him. 25. And the last report we got just a few years later, his sister, the older of the 2 twins, died at about the same age. Heart attack. They had all the fun they wanted. They ridiculed their parents. They got their freedom. They did what they wanted. They left the truth. They had fun, and they're dead. The other girl had an illegitimate child. She tried to have an abortion, but it was found out early enough. They stopped that. When she finally had the baby, she gave it to the mother and walked away. She's now living in the world, and the grandmother is rearing the child. This is a real-life story. I know the people. I know the family. I worked with them. I sat in on the committee meetings where they looked at the elders as though they could spit on them with contempt. These little inexperienced kids who thought they knew everything, and they're not with us anymore. That's the way it goes, friends. Not everybody who leaves the truth ends up as they did. That's an extreme example. But it is so serious. We're trying to get a point across here because we truly love our children. We don't want to see them hurt. But the children often don't understand that. And so they're going to try to get around what the parents are directing. And we're going to try our best to stop it. How did all of this come to light? They tried to cover it up very well. Well, you see, what the Bible states is true. These aren't just cute little expressions. This is the mind of God. And he tells you things that are known as axioms, truths, things that don't change. They're principles that are like cast in concrete. It doesn't matter what you do, it's true. It's like planting a seed. If you plant a bean, it is naive to think you're going to get corn. But that's what we do when we think things will turn out well for us and we disobey Jehovah God's laws. It's the same thing. We're as naive. I want you to look at some scriptures with me tonight. Please, take these scriptures. This is from Jehovah. It's not, Brother Valorz did not write these things. Go to Galatians chapter 6. And we're going to review some. I've got enough material here for 2 hours. I'm going to try to do this in the time allotted by the society, about 40 minutes. Okay. Go to Galatians chapter 6. Now, I want you to look at these 2 verses, 6 and 7. Do not be misled. God is not one to be mocked. This word means to treat with ridicule or contempt. He is not one to be mocked. Whatever a man is sowing, this he will also reap. Because he who is sowing with a view to the flesh will reap corruption from the flesh. Period. Unequivocal. You can't do it another way. That is the way it will happen. You cannot reap according to the flesh, and things will turn out okay. You've lost your mind if you think that's true. And then it goes on and says, he who is sowing with a view to the Spirit will reap everlasting life from the Spirit. So if you stay in line with what the Scriptures teach and the fine precepts found in God's Word, it will turn out well with you. You'll be happy now, you'll be protected now, and you'll be in the new order. Otherwise you will not. Simple. That's the truth. You want to find something that's very interesting? These words were not written to worldly people. They were written to the brothers in the congregation in Galatia by the Apostle Paul. He said to them, God is not to be mocked. The Byington translation here says, you cannot thumb your nose at God. Because the brothers in the congregation needed that counsel. They were off base. They had deflected. And he gave them straightforward counsel. You can't do this. You're going to run into trouble. Now he wrote to the Colossians. Let's find that book, not far from where you are. This is a similar, but not the same, thought. Colossians 3, I'm starting with verse 23. Whatever you're doing, work at it whole-souled as to Jehovah, not to men. For we know it is from Jehovah you will receive the due reward of the inheritance. Slave for the Master Christ. Look at the next verse. Certainly the one that is doing wrong will receive back what he wrongly did. There is no partiality. So it may be that a parent cannot punish you because they don't find out what you've done, but Jehovah God knows and will follow through. So that's a very sobering thought. Additionally, the same man who wrote these words, and by the way, this was written to a congregation in Colossae, wrote to the man Timothy. A few pages further in your Bible, in 1 Timothy chapter 5, notice this interesting scripture. Verse 24. The sins of some men are publicly manifest, leading directly to judgment. But as for other men, their sins also become manifest later. So we might think we're hiding things, but it doesn't work that way. Eventually, it comes out. Anyway, why would a person want to hide a problem that they've got in the form of a sin? When we've committed a sin, don't we want to get that? Don't we want to get cleansed? We should follow the direction in the Bible. Go to the older men. It's like having a cancer and hiding it from the doctor. So you're not feeling well. No, I'm okay. You got a cancer eating inside you. Do you hide it from him? You tell him about it. Let him get it out or treat it somehow. It's going to kill you. And it's the same with sin. When we're involved in wrongdoing, we have got to get it corrected. You cannot just leave it that way. Because Jehovah God watches. What are we going to do? And if we're bearing a serious sin, maybe the brothers in the congregation will never know and disfellowship us. Maybe never. But Jehovah God will take that into account. He'll handle it. By the way, I would like to tell you that these kids that I told you about that infected all these other people, it went on much bigger than the 3 dozen. It infected scores of children. It started mainly with them. Just went on and on and on. We had a lot of children who were in serious trouble, mainly between the ages of 13 and 19, but some older and some younger. And during all this mess where it seemed like just everybody was touched by it, my wife and I attended a wedding. And at the wedding there was a young man right in the congregation where this was going on. But no problem. He had no problem. When people said about all the others who were involved in wrongdoing, his name never came up. And I went over to him and I said to him, Gary, you've got children in trouble all around you. I said, what? How come you're not involved? He looked at me and he almost knocked me over. He said, I could never do that to my parents. He had too much respect for his parents to bring any shame on them. And he loved Jehovah God. He could not bring reproach on God's name. This young man just spit that out at me now. He didn't think about it. Is that the way you feel? It's easy to get involved in wrongdoing. It's everywhere. This world stinks with wrongdoing. It reeks with it. And it'll suck you in. And then you think you're cool because you're with the world and accepted by people of the world or others in the congregation who are weak. You're not cool. You're on the wrong track, going the wrong way, and bringing reproach on your family, yourself, and the congregation. And to reiterate, those of us who are trying to do what is right resent it. How do people get involved? Why do they get involved? We're going to discuss two reasons. One of them will take longer, the second one is quick. There are other reasons, but here are the two reasons. One, others make the wrong course look appealing. They serve as a corrupting influence. They are liars, and they're trying to corrupt you. You may not view it that way, and they may not view it that way, but that's what they are. Back in the late 70s, my wife and I were traveling through the Midwest. We traveled 7 states in a big district there. And I ran into a problem of huge proportions that cost our brothers about $1.5 million. It's a lot of money. What happened? There was an organization, a corporation called Philea. That's what they named it. Brotherly love, right? Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. All comes from Philea, this Greek word. So here's the way it worked. We have these projects, these products that we're marketing, and we'd like you to get involved. And we have these exercise machines and these mirrors and these health food products, but we need some money to promote them. So I'll tell you what you do. If you could just give us about $5,000, we'll guarantee you 10% return in 6 months. That's unheard of. 20% a year. Where do you get that? But it sounded so good that some of the brothers, with caution, came up with $5,000 and gave it to them. 6 months later, they got a check for their $5,000 and 10%. Oh, this is legitimate. The bank at the time was giving 7 or 8%. This is crazy. I'll do it. Can I invest some more? No, I'm sorry. Right now, we've got all the money we need. A few weeks later, you know what? There is an opening. If you want to, you can have a piece of this, same condition, 6 months, 10%. Brother came up, $20,000. 6 months later, he gets the $20,000 back and 10%. This is fantastic. Can I invest some more? We don't need your help right now, but if we do, we'll let you know. A few months go by, they receive a letter. We are going to make one big push to promote these products all at once. Brothers mortgaged their farms. $100,000, $103,000, $30,000. We know the people. A friend of mine, an old pioneer partner of mine, lost $103,000. And then, these people vaporized. It looked so good. It even looked like you could do it. And you had an opportunity to do it once or twice or 3 times. And then, bang, the trap snapped shut and caught them all. Well, that's the way it is with immorality, isn't it? You toy with it a little, and you get away with it. And you try it again. And somebody else may be there egging you on. They may talk about it. They brag about it sometimes, their exploits, what they've been able to accomplish, what they've done, and nobody knows. But I've seen the brothers who are in great despair when it's over. I've seen them crying. I've seen those who've lost their dignity, lost their virginity, lost their self-respect, lost their relationship with Jehovah in humiliation and embarrassment. I've seen it too many times. May look good, but it's a trap. And we who have been around the block more than once would like to warn you. If you listen, you'll be way ahead of the game. And if you think we're joking or fools, you'll fall in the same trap. Now, the Bible actually talks about this very thing in 2 Peter, and I want you to turn there with me. 2 Peter chapter 2. Now, remember, please, brothers, please, these words were written by the Apostle Peter to Christians. He was writing to Christians, just like we are here tonight. He wasn't writing to worldly people. And this is what he said. 2 Peter 2, and I'm starting with verse 18. For they, he's talking about those who try to suck you into some wrongdoing, they utter swelling expressions of no profit. And by the desires of the flesh and by loose habits, they entice those who are just escaping from people who conduct themselves in error. While they are promising them freedom, they themselves are existing as slaves of corruption. For whoever is overcome by another is enslaved by this one. Isn't that interesting? Promise you freedom. Get out from underneath your parents. They're just choking you. They don't let you have any fun. Come on, you can sneak out, or we'll tell them we're going here and we'll go over here. These are lies. But they promote them and they get people involved, and pretty soon the kid turns around and he's caught. He's involved in serious wrongdoing. Now he's got a bad conscience. He doesn't have self-respect. That's gone. He may have lost more than that. It's the way it works. These corrupting influences are in the congregation. That's what Peter's talking about. So such persons who are involved in wrongdoing, avoid them like they have the plague, because they do. It's contagious, and it'll put you right in the grave. What happens when you try to withdraw from such a group? What happens when you say something that might be spiritual? What happens when you reach out for some spiritual goals, as so many here have? You've got some young people in this congregation doing just great. They're right on target. They're involved in the meetings. They groom themselves intelligently. They carry themselves well. They can talk to older people without giggling. They handle themselves nicely. Oh, they're nerds. They're going to be ridiculed. They'll be shunned. They have tremendous courage. They don't cave in to peer pressure from other people who don't have respect for the truth. This is the way it works. You're in 1 Peter or 2 Peter, go to 1 Peter chapter 4. Verse 3. For the time that is passed by is sufficient for you to have worked out the will of the nations, when you proceeded in deeds of loose conduct, lusts, excesses with wine, revelries, drinking matches, and illegal idolatries. Now watch verse 4, friends. Because you do not continue running with them in this course to the same low sink of debauchery, they're puzzled and go on speaking abusively of you. You withdraw from them because they're in a low sink of debauched life. And so you say, I'm not going to do that anymore. And they'll ridicule you. That's what it says, and that's what they do. That's their attempt to pressure you to come back into the fold. Because if you take a course that is upright, it shows them to be so far off base. They want you with them. Then they've got justification for their course. They will ridicule you. Expect it. That's their only tool. See, ridicule is the first and last argument of a fool. That's all they can do is sneer and ridicule and poke fun. They can't offer any intelligent, reasonable reason why you should do it, because it doesn't exist. So they just joke. In Romans 12:2, don't look this up, you know it. It says, don't be fashioned after the world. Quit being fashioned according to this system of things. The Phillips translation puts it this way. Don't let the world squeeze you into its mold. And that's what they do. They pressure you to get in and conform to what they think is right. the way you should dress, the way you should comport yourself, the way you should treat your parents, the way you should handle yourself at the Kingdom Hall, the way you should be at school. They want you to be a certain way. They're going to force you into that mold, and it's worldly. But you'll feel the pressure because of the ridicule. Now, you've got your choice. You can cave in, which most do, or you can stand up for what's right. Be a man or a lady. Now, some such people, and there are not many, but some, they are like a yeast mold that is put in a dough. You can take flour and water, just the two, and mix it up, and you end up with this big lump. Now, how much yeast does it take to corrupt it? Just hardly none. Just stick it on the size of a pea. It'll work through the whole lump. Well, Paul wrote this to the congregations in Galatia. Again, these are to Christians, but watch the first question he asks. This is beautifully worded. It's Galatians chapter 5. I'm beginning with verse 7. Now, you've got to get the feeling here. He was concerned because the brothers had lost their momentum. They were involved in some wrongdoing, and it bothered him. What had happened? How had they made this reversal? And so in verse 7 he says, you were running well. Who hindered you from keeping on obeying the truth? Notice he didn't say what, who. There was some person that infected you. Who was it? And then he says, this sort of persuasion is not from the one calling you. A little leaven ferments the whole lump. I'm confident about you who are in union with the Lord that you will not come to think otherwise. Now watch. But the one who is causing you trouble will bear his judgment no matter who he may be. So that yeast-like infection in the congregation, Paul says, look out. Look out for it. It will corrupt you, just like a lump of dough is corrupted with a small piece of yeast. That's the first way it happens. Pressure from others to get involved in wrongdoing. And the temptations can be tremendous. The second thing is, they try it and get away with it. Once, twice, maybe over a period of weeks or months or years. Not caught, not chastised, not disciplined, and that just firms them in their determination to continue. Have you ever read this? I'm going to read it to you. Just listen to it. This is the point, and it is a truth. You'll see it in society today, all around us. Because sentence against a bad work has not been executed speedily, that is why the heart of the sons of men has become fully set in them to do bad. They see people getting away with it, and they're going to do it too. Although a sinner may be doing bad 100 times and continuing a long time as he pleases, yet I'm well aware it will turn out well with those fearing the true God, because they are in fear of him. But it will not turn out well at all with the wicked one. Neither will he prolong his days that are like a shadow, because he's not in fear of God. Some of our children do not fear Jehovah. He's not real to them. It's very sad. Jehovah is not fooled. He sees it all, and he will call us to account, every one of us, irrespective of our age. Ever heard this? I don't want to get my friends in trouble, so I'm not going to tell what they're doing. I know they're involved in wrongdoing. I know who, what, where, when, why. I know it all. But I'm not going to say a word. I don't want to get them in trouble. I'd like to take that apart for you. There are two pieces to it. One, this is a friend. This is a friend trying to corrupt you with things that will cause your death. This is a friend. You obviously have no concept of what the word really means. Two, your friend is already in deep trouble with Jehovah. He's going to die. If the end of the system comes tomorrow, he's dead meat. You need to help him, by letting the elders know what's going on so they can offer some discipline and maybe correct this person. Because as long as it goes uncorrected, he just gets deeper in sin. Now that is a fact. I'm not lying to you. I'm telling you the truth. The Bible book of Leviticus chapter 5 verse 1 speaks about the principle of passing on information to those who have the right to know when there is wrongdoing involved. It has equal application to the Christian congregation. But you know what that takes? That takes courage. That takes genuine courage, real courage, not counterfeit courage, not the false, cool swaggering and the cockiness of people of the world, not the liar who keeps everything hidden and covered up, who uses a subterfuge so nobody can see what's going on. Where is the courage when one has to lie about his or her life? That's the coward. And lying is promoted by Satan. The liar is going to die. The scriptures make it clear Jehovah hates a liar in Proverbs 6. He hates them because they're not real. But he sees who they are. In Revelation 21:8, when it speaks about that lake of fire, it says in that lake are all the liars. Serious matter. So, I don't want to get my friend in trouble is a joke. He's in deep trouble. You want to get him out? Pass this on to the people who have a right to know, the elders in the congregation, so they can do something. Your elders are imperfect. Every one of these men is imperfect. They make mistakes. They forget things. But they are not intentionally doing anything wicked. But your friend is. Big difference, isn't there? Sometimes you'll hear, the elders never do anything. We got problems. They don't do anything. They can read minds? They've got to hear something. So you keep it quiet and then complain. Doesn't make sense. But it doesn't matter. If the person never gets disciplined, if the wrongdoer is never found out, the Bible says God will judge fornicators and adulterers. Now, I'm almost out of time. I've got a whole lot more to do. I want to hit a few points. I want to take the time, if you don't mind. Next time, I'll give a short talk. I want you to look at some scriptures with me, and these are several thoughts that I have down here. I will not do all of this material, but some of it. Go to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. We do not have the time to actually walk through these verses, but there's so much here. 1 Thessalonians 4, starting with verse 3. For this is what God wills, the sanctifying of you, that you abstain from fornication. By the way, the word fornication comes from the Greek word porneia and does not just mean sexual intercourse. It means almost everything leading up to it. So porneia has a broad meaning. So acts of loose conduct can definitely move in that direction. That each one of you should know how to get possession of his own vessel, that's your body, in sanctification and honor. Is that the way we look at ourselves, as honorable? Not in covetous sexual appetite, such as also the nations have, which do not know God. Do you understand this expression, covetous sexual appetite? You know what an appetite is? Like you have an appetite. We all have appetites. We're hungry. We eat food, right? Okay. We have a hunger. It's an appetite. A desire for food to satisfy. A sexual appetite is when we have a desire to satisfy a sexual need. It's not wrong. And Jehovah God put it in the human family so the family didn't die out. If having sex relations was like having a root canal, there would be no people on the earth today. It's a pleasurable experience, but it is for married people, period. A covetous sexual appetite is when you covet something you covet that isn't yours and you want it. Covet Brother Willie Dennis's watch. I can't covet my watch because I own it, but I can covet his. So when we go after somebody to have immoral relations with them and we're not married to them, that's a covetous sexual appetite, and it is condemned in the Bible. It's got to be controlled. And then he goes on and says in verse 6, that no one go to the point of harming and encroach upon the rights of his brother in this matter, because Jehovah is the one who exacts punishment for all these things. Now, what does that mean to encroach? If you own a piece of property, and next to it is another piece of property, and the man over there builds a house on that property, and part of it is sticking onto your property, he has encroached on your property. He's where he doesn't belong. He's moved into an area where he doesn't belong. Or let's say you are given a sales territory of all of Phoenix to sell a certain product. But that's it. You cannot go out of Phoenix. But then you go down to Tucson and start selling. You've encroached on that man's property. See, it means being where you don't belong. Well, how can somebody who commits an immoral act encroach on the rights of his brothers? If I commit an immoral act, how can I encroach on your rights or your rights? I'm not having an immoral relations with you. Oh. People who come in the truth today and in years past expect and have the right to come into a clean organization. We've left the filth of the world. We've come into an organization, an international brotherhood that does not have racial, national, language barriers. We love each other. This is important to us. And then somebody sullies the reputation of the congregation. You have no right to do that. You've encroached on my rights. You want to live that way? Don't do it here. Don't do it in this organization. Now, I'm standing up here saying what your parents have told you, right? And what the elders have said in various talks, what you've heard at circuit assemblies and district conventions, right? What you read in the Watchtower. Have I said anything new? No. What's my motive? Do I get points for this? Why am I doing this? Why are your parents doing this? They love you. Hard to believe, they love you. They don't want you to get hurt. I don't want you to get hurt. The elders don't want you to get hurt. Our motive is to help you, to save you, to protect you. What is the motive of the people who try to involve you in the wrongdoing? Who say, go on, let's smoke and here, take a cigarette. Go on, try it. What's their motive? Well, they're already down in the filth, and they want you to get down with them. They want to corrupt you. You going to let them? Their motive is not pure. It is not good. They are instruments of a wicked one trying to corrupt you. Think of motive. That'll help. Show respect for the elders and the parents. It demonstrates maturity. What are you trying to achieve? You're young. What do you want? You want to be grown up. You want to be given responsibility. Then you must handle yourself responsibly. When you are irresponsible, when you are untruthful, when you demonstrate yourself to be immature. That's not what you want. You want to be mature. Handle yourself responsibly. Show respect for your parents. You want to grow into maturity. Want to do it faster? Then demonstrate that you're more adult, not childlike. That's not too complicated, is it? Parents, protect your children. Do you see any elements in or out of the congregation that are not good? Do not let your children associate with them. Period. It's dangerous. And this thing, well, they're okay, there's a group. That's not true. Groups get into huge problems. And often, once they leave as a group, they do not remain as a group. They pair off. It just happens. I mean, I was young once, not long ago. That may surprise some of you. I was reared in the world. I know what it's like to hear. But I came into the truth because this is the right way to live. This is the truth. This is not a religion. Like people go out and select some kind of laundry detergent or breakfast cereal. I don't have this one, I think I'll get this one. No, I think I'll get this one. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This matters. We teach the Bible. We teach the truth. We're concerned about this. Look around this Kingdom Hall. If you knew the people, the older people, and knew what they'd put into the truth, some of them gave up educations willingly, promotions, high-paying jobs, careers. Some of them have moved long distances to serve where the need is great. Some are reaching out for spiritual at great sacrifices. They're here and they have the truth and they love it. It's precious to us. And we want to keep this congregation undefiled. You want to be involved in that? You're welcome. If you do not want to change, if you have a problem, and stay right on target, you're really not welcome to stay in Jehovah's organization. If you don't want to change, if you absolutely resist change for the better, it's not the place for you. You'll be unhappy. Believe me, we will. Now, I am not trying to win a popularity contest giving this talk. Did you figure that out? I've got some youngsters in the audience who may have very bad feelings about what I'm saying. You may think I'm all wet. It's your opinion. But all I'm telling you is something you won't hear from people of the world or those who are perhaps in the congregation with bad attitudes. Chapter 4. Now please remember, these words were written in a letter to a congregation of Christian brothers and sisters. He said to them in verse 9, "But now that you have come to know God, or rather, now that you've come to be known by God," see, they've made some Christian progress, "how is it you are turning back again to the weak and beggarly elementary things and want a slave for them over again?" You're regressing. In verse 11, "I fear for you that somehow I've toiled to no purpose respecting you." He'd helped them, you see, gain a knowledge of the truth, and now in certain areas they were going back in the other direction. And verses 15 and 16, "Where then is that happiness you had?" Because people who fight the truth, like these youngsters, they sit like this at the hall. You can see it. I can just look out and see it. And they pass glances to one another as though they've got some kind of communication that transcends what we're teaching, which is Bible truth. They're not happy. They're not happy kids. They have fun some evenings, but happiness, fun is temporary. Happiness is underlying and it cannot be shaken. They don't have happiness. They're not happy. So he says to them here in verse 15, "Where then is that happiness you had? For I bear you witness that if it had been possible, you would have gouged out your eyes and given them to me." You at one time had such tremendous faith. "Well then, have I become your enemy because I tell you the truth?" Apparently that's the way they viewed Paul. All he was saying was the truth. And that's what I've done here tonight. Now, I'm sure this is going to provide a lot of conversation for the young people here. But if you want to criticize what I've said, here's a lesson in anatomy. This is my face, and this is my back. Come talk to me. I'd be glad to listen to you if you're willing to reason. Listen to two sides. Give me your view and let me talk to you. Be upfront and honest, not deceitful. Talk to your parents straightforwardly, kindly, and with respect, as you should. And show the elders proper respect. You might think you're missing out on something. I'll tell you what you're missing out on, a great deal of pain. I was in Apache Junction here 1 year ago and was out in service, and a brother said he had a return visit on a girl who used to be in the truth. Well, I was interested to go. So we went over there, and it was about 108. It was very hot, very hot. And we came upon a trailer, probably was a silver trailer, aluminum, perhaps 22 feet long, not big. Doors were open, so I knew they had no air conditioning. in this heat, you know what that's like? They're like ovens. One of the pop-up vents on the top. And here was this girl outside. She was probably 27, 28. Well-built. Must look like an aerobics type person. She had a tank top on and a pair of cut-off jeans, smoking a cigarette, big tattoo on her shoulder. Really looked feminine and nice. She's all hot and sweaty out there trying to fix a rake. She's bending these pieces around. Well, we got over, and the brother introduced me, and we got to talking to her, and I said, I understand that you've had association with Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah, I used to be a Jehovah Witness. Didn't even know how to say it. I said, where are you from? I'm from Binghamton, New York. I said, well, I actually taught a pioneer service school up there in Vestal, which is a little suburb of Binghamton. And so we got to talking, and she said, I said, well, I understand that you used to be in the truth. What happened? Well, I'll tell you what happened. I never had no fun. There were 7 of us kids, and my mom tried to she took us to the meetings, and we sat there, and we were bored, and I wanted to get out of there, and we never had no fun. Well, we'd been talking for a few minutes, and I found out that her relatives were scattered all over. She had 2 brothers in prison, in the penitentiary. A couple of her sisters were in institutions drying out from drugs and alcohol. 2 of them had had abortions. All of them had been married and divorced at least once. And here she sits out here, sweating like a horse, working on a rake with this 22-foot trailer, and out comes her boyfriend. Well, he was something to see. He had a pair of glasses on, looked like he had cleaned them with butter. I don't know how he saw through them. And he stank, he smelled. And he came out, and he was a Mormon. He says, I'm a Mormon. And I thought, well, what a pair. And so she says, my mom was disfellowshipped. They disfellowshipped her for nothing. I've heard this before. I often check it out and find out that people are deep in trouble. That's what she said. And so my mama didn't take us back no more, and now we can do what we want. And I said to her, boy, you have really improved your life, haven't you? You got 2 brothers in the penitentiary. You got 2 sisters in institutions drying out from alcohol and drug abuse. I just looked at her and I went like this. And so you can do what you want. I says, you know what? The truth was a protection for you. It kept you clean morally, and it kept you clean physically, and it gave you a relationship with God. And you got loose from that. Aren't you happy? Hasn't it really improved your family? And she put her head down. She knew exactly where I was going. Well, that's where you're headed. If you have disrespect for the elders and your parents and the truth, and you might sit there and come up with all kinds of ways and body gestures to demonstrate that you don't agree with that. Time will tell. You can't fight it. The Bible says you reap what you sow. That's from Jehovah God. Believe me, he has more knowledge and wisdom than you do. Demonstrate your love for Jehovah God in your daily activities. Take a firm stand. Take a stand for what's right. And if somebody ridicules you or pokes fun at you and they won't let you in their inner loop, who cares? Who cares? Find somebody who's doing what's right. This congregation is going to move forward. The brothers and sisters here are making improvements and corrections in their field service, in their meeting attendance, and in every way. You want to be part of that? You want to be a brother to these people that I read about? These people had faith in God. They loved Jehovah. They gave their lives for him. We are proud of them. How do we feel about you? How do you feel about you? Peace of mind, self-respect, closeness with your Christian brothers, a good relationship with Jehovah, confidence for a successful future. That's what you get when you do what is right. It all comes with just following the course Jehovah's prescribed. You want to be with the congregation and move along? You want peace in your family, or do you want disruption in your family? You want arguments, or do you want quietude? What do you want? You can't do it any other way. Now, the elders here are concerned about this congregation, and I am too. You who are young have a great deal in your hand. You can contribute to the peace of the congregation, or you can take a course counter to it and eventually suffer the consequences, and they are dire. Those of you in the congregation, if you see persons who are out of step by attitude, remember they're not good associates for your children or you. I didn't finish it all, but I got through most of it. This was a hard talk for me to give. You see, a public speaker can only deliver the facts. You've got to be motivated to apply them. The man can just yell fire. You want to stay in the building, you may. But the smart person listens and acts. Well, brothers, this brings our meeting to a conclusion.